Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris McMillon with Autonomy Season 1, and I'm here with Michael Badnarik. Michael, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me today. So you're down in Austin, Texas, and I'm in East Texas. You getting a storm there?
We had a little bit of rain, but just a drizzle, nothing measurable.
Yeah, same here. It's been kind of muggy and overcast. I'm enjoying it while I can because, we both know what's coming. It's gonna be a long, hot summer.
I love hot summers.
I-
My cowboy hat, a tall, sweet tea, and I'm a happy camper.
Excellent. I was just wondering, could you, when you ran for president in 2004 against Bush and Ralph Nader and
John
Kerry, what lessons did you learn from the beginning to the end of the experience? What was some of the more key things that you learned from that experience that you didn't previously know, or if there was anything you would do different if you were to go about?
Well, my first lesson is that no good deed goes unpunished. I got a lot more flack from members of the Libertarian Party than I did from, the Democrats or Republicans, both of which pretty much ignored me. I had no idea how physically difficult it would be. I would wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. You shower, shave, and get dressed in your sleep, and then you leave the hotel about 4 o'clock in the morning, drive to the airport at 5, and you're going through security at the airport at 5 o'clock in the morning to catch an airplane where the wheels are off the ground at 6 a.m. And then 3 hours later, it's 9 o'clock, and you're landing in your destination airport, and they've got cameras lined up. You step off the airplane, you don't get your luggage, you're answering questions.
Yeah.
And we would do anywhere between 12 and 16 interviews a day. Newspaper, radio, television. And people would meet me and go, "Oh my God." You're like, "Are you scared?" "Afraid of what?" It's like, "Well, you're answering all those questions." It's not all those questions. There are only 7 questions. It's the same 7 questions in every interview, almost in the same order. And so by the second or third week of the campaign, I was literally inventing new ways to answer the question just to entertain myself. Because I'm going nuts with, I feel like a parrot. Polly wants a cracker. So I would answer the question. It was basically the same answer, but I would give a different metaphor to emphasize the answer. And one of the things that my handlers were surprised with is that I was willing to be confrontational. Now, the general theory is that, you want people to like you, you want people to vote for you. And so you've got to basically kiss their ass and give them the answer that they want. No, if you want somebody to give you the answer that you're hoping for, talk to the Democrats or Republicans. I'm a libertarian. I'm going to tell you the truth, whether you're ready for it or not. And most of the people interviewing me were not ready for it. They start to argue with me. And I'm going, "You're wrong." I was in Florida. A personal friend of mine organized an interview at a real prestigious newspaper. And so my friend knew the reporter and knew that they had quite a bit of clout in town. And he said, "You got to be careful with this guy. Like, don't piss him off, because the adage is you never want to piss off somebody who buys ink by the barrel." If they're printing thousands or hundreds of thousands of newspapers a day, you don't want them printing bad stuff about you.
Yeah.
So we went to the newspaper office. The editor took us into this room with a huge mahogany table, and the editor asked me a question. And I gave him an answer. He goes, "That's wrong." I said, No, it's not. I've studied the Constitution for 20 years. I've literally memorized the Bill of Rights, and it's not wrong. And so the editor and I got into a conversation. It started getting heated because people don't change their mind right away. And so at one point during this interview, the editor and I are yelling at each other. And my friend is horrified. He's absolutely horrified because, I mean, I've clearly pissed this guy off, and my friend is trying to figure out how to terminate the interview and drag my butt out of the office before I make it any worse. And so we're yelling at each other, and the editor it's like, no. And I basically was able to demonstrate that the editor had a contradiction. He wanted to be yes, yes, always, and no, no, never at the same time. You pick one. You can pick heads or tails, but you can't pick both. Pick one. And so the editor's going, well, how do I? And the conversation mellowed out, and suddenly the editor saw the light. He's going, oh my God, you were right. And the editor said, how do I become a member of the Libertarian Party? So the interview lasted for about 15 more minutes. The editor shakes hands with me. He wants my campaign literature. Do I have a bumper sticker that he can have? And call him and let him know how let him know how to register as a libertarian. We walked out to the parking lot, and my friend said, I have never seen anything like that. I mean, and he told me, I was getting ready to grab you by the arm and physically drag you out of the office because I didn't want you fighting but you can't win a war with no bullets.
Yeah.
This is an ideological war. It's a war of words and ideas, but not every opinion is equally valid.
Yeah.
It's not. If I think 2 + 2 is 4 and you think 2 + 2 is 5, you're wrong.
Yeah.
You've never learned your arithmetic, and you're trying to figure out why your checkbook doesn't balance. I'll tell you, because the numbers don't add up the way you want them to. You go into a room and you said, I counted 5 chairs. I go into the room, I said, I counted 6 chairs. One of us is wrong.
Yeah.
One of us missed a chair, or the other guy counted a chair twice. But there can only be a certain integer number of chairs in the room. So a number of things, one of us is wrong, possibly both of us are wrong. Maybe there are 7 chairs and we both screwed up. What's the solution to that conflict? The solution to the conflict is you and I go into the room together and we count chairs together. And what may have happened is you counted the 5 chairs that were visible, but you didn't see the chair that was hidden behind the door. You opened up the door covered that chair, and so you counted 5. Well, I went in and counted the 5 that you saw, and I also looked behind the door to see the extra chair. So once we do that together, and you go, oh, okay, I didn't see the extra chair. So you were wrong, but you don't feel stupid for it. You made a mistake. Everybody makes mistakes. The difference is people holding on to their mistake. Yeah. It's like, I refuse to change my mind. Don't confuse me with the facts. And one of the most egregious examples of this, Galileo looks through a telescope. He's looking at 4 largest moons of Jupiter. He's collected all of this data on the Jupiter orbits and says, wait a minute, Copernicus was right. The sun is in the middle, and the earth revolves around the sun.
Yeah.
And the Catholic Church says, you go to hell. They literally excommunicated Galileo. They forcibly made him recant. So he stood in court and said, I was wrong. The sun is not in the middle. The earth is in the middle. The sun revolves around the earth. And then when I got out of college, I got a job in Northern Illinois, and I'm at my desk listening to the radio. And 350 years later, the Vatican has decided that it will excommunicate Galileo. Really? 350 years later, it took you to admit that you were wrong. We've put men on the moon. We've identified planets far beyond Jupiter. We understand how the solar system works, but you are going to insist that everybody is wrong because they think the sun is in the middle.
That's a long period of cognitive dissonance.
Absolutely. I mean, refusing to accept the truth when the evidence is overwhelming. Now, I subscribe to science, which is a method of determining reality. Science is objective. Water boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. It boils at 212, whether I boil the water, whether you boil the water, whether some guy in California boils the water. It's water. It's hydrogen and oxygen, and it has a given boiling point. Now, it boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit, or if we're going to use centigrade, which you do as a scientist, it boils at 100 and freezes at 0. Or if you're really a scientist, use a Kelvin scale, and it probably melts. I think it melts at 273 degrees Kelvin and boils at 370 degrees Kelvin, because temperature is a function of molecular vibration. The colder something is, the slower the molecules are vibrating. So you want to make water colder? Slow down the vibration. You want to make ice colder? Slow down the vibration. You want to get to liquid nitrogen? Got to be going really, really slow. You slow it down, slow it down, slow it down. How slow can you go?
Yeah.
What is the slowest possible vibration you can have? 0. If the molecules stop vibrating, can it go slower than that? No. Completely stopped is the slowest you can possibly go. That function is known as absolute 0. So this is all science. And if you have differing opinions, I can show you how you're wrong. I can explain the science to you. And, if you understand it, you go, oh, that makes perfectly good sense.
Yeah, just eliminate the contradictions until there's nothing left but the truth.
That's right. And that's what science does. Science is not omniscient. We don't know everything, but we know the wrong answers. Yeah. And you have to use logic assiduously. You can't go into a submarine and close all but one door. I want you to lock down all the hatches except this one, and then we're going to submerge. Really? That's almost correct.
Yeah.
And so one of the problems that we have in today's society is that everybody is politically correct. Politically correct means that you don't have an opinion of your own. You wait until you watch Fox News or CNN and you adopt what everybody else's opinion is, right or wrong. You want to be part of the group. You don't want anybody laughing at you because you're different. They have done psychological experiments at Stanford University in California. I think it's just south of San Jose. They're famous for many of their psychological experiments.
The most famous one that comes to mind are the Milgram Experiments, where they proved that people have the tendency to obey people, even if it goes against their ethics and morals, just because someone is wearing a uniform or a laboratory coat.
Right. You think that you're giving somebody an electrical shock, and you're giving them enough of an electrical shock that it would literally execute them. You, based on the screams and stuff, you should understand that you are inflicting great pain. But the guy with the lab coat and the clipboard said, no, go ahead, just ignore the noise, just flip the switch, and people do. What's even worse is that you go into a room, you think you're one of several people in the experiment. Turns out you're the only person. Everybody else in blue jeans and a sweatshirt they're Confederates. They're working with the professor. And they say, how much is 2 plus 2? 5. How much is 2 plus 2? 5. And they go through the room. Everybody in the room says 2 plus 2 is 5. And they come to you and say, how much is 2 plus 2? 75% of the people will say 5. They know it's a wrong answer, but they don't want to be not a part of the group.
Yeah.
The other people in the room will laugh at me if I don't give the same answer. That is terrifying.
And that you could argue that's an analogy for what's happening with the media and
it's not an analogy.
Yeah.
It's not an analogy. That's what's happening with the media.
Yeah, that's true.
CNN says this is the answer, and 20 million puppets go, oh my God, write that down. Now I know what I think. I was dating a woman for a while and was teaching her philosophy. And at one point she said, what is my opinion on this? I don't understand that question. And I thought certainly the phrasing is wrong, but she wanted me to tell her my opinion so that she could agree with me.
Yeah, fascinating. It's a hard trap to get out of for someone who, if you go through the public education system and you combine that with the power, the media is such a powerful force, particularly for someone who has never been told that, or even thought twice that maybe they're lying to us, maybe they're manipulating what we're supposed to think. And it takes work to become aware of the works of Edward Bernays and Bertrand Russell and these characters who literally have written the books and created the techniques that are being used by the mainstream media and other sources to make people think a certain way.
Please do not call it the public education system. That implies that they are actually conveying knowledge to the students. It's an indoctrination system.
Yes.
The whole idea is for you to be conditioned to authority. It doesn't matter what the authority says, if they are the authority, and you are supposed to listen to the authority. That's how Chernobyl happened in Russia. In Russia, they are very, very subservient to authority. It's not my problem. I did what I was told. So if my supervisor tells me to turn off all these safety features, then I'll turn off all the safety features. I don't imagine for a moment that this is completely, totally irrational. We're putting the reactor in a dangerous situation.
Yeah.
My supervisor must have a reason for doing it. I'm a good Russian. I will follow my orders. So as a skydiving instructor, you always jump out of an airplane with one more parachute than you plan to use. So if you're planning to jump out of an airplane and open a parachute, you better have two. You have the parachute that you plan to use, and you have your reserve parachute that you can open if the first one gets all tangled up, which almost never happens. But if it happens once, that's enough to kill you. Yeah. So before you get on an airplane for your first jump, we teach you how to open the parachute. Then we teach you how to disconnect the parachute so you can open the reserve parachute. Well, what if you want to practice opening a reserve parachute? Well, you can do that. You can open your first parachute, and then you can cut it away and open your reserve parachute, but not without a third parachute. We actually have to rig a third parachute on your body so that you have one more parachute. You always land with one parachute that you didn't plan to use. That makes sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So imagine that you were going to practice opening 3 parachutes. Obviously, we got to figure out a way to connect 4 parachutes to your body. Purely hypothetical. We don't do that. But I want to use that as a metaphor for the Chernobyl experiment, for the Chernobyl reactor. Every reactor has safety features in it. In the United States, the #1 safety feature is a 5-foot thick concrete dome called a containment. And it almost never happens, but if they spring a leak in one of the pipes that's carrying, radiated water, all of that gets trapped inside this concrete dome. It is called a containment because that's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to contain all of that radioactive steam. Chernobyl didn't have one. They built a reactor and they put it in like an aluminum garage.
Man.
And Americans went, you can't do that. And the Russians went, yeah, we can. Look, there it is. And so they had this garage. Well, Chernobyl was not a nuclear explosion. It was not like Hiroshima or Nagasaki. There was no mushroom cloud. What happened was they were getting ready to refuel the reactor. And there are many, many safety features in place. From your point of view, they're like extra parachutes.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're shutting down the reactor, but we want to test the emergency system. So it's like, open your reserve parachute and see if it works. Okay, yeah, that worked. Okay, now cut the reserve parachute and open the third parachute to see if that opens. Okay, the third one opens, and you've only got 4. It's like, okay, open the 4th parachute to see if that works, and it stops. And say, okay, now cut that away. Why? Are you not paying attention? You just threw away 3 really good parachutes. And now the last one that worked, you're going to take a knife and cut it? What are you going to land with? Well, you're not going to land, well, you will, but you're going to land at 120 miles an hour,
Yeah.
and you're going to look like a pepperoni pizza. And that's what was happening in the control room at Chernobyl. They kept, okay, we're testing the emergency system. So you have to let the reactor get to a point where the emergency system works. You go, okay, that system works. Now we're going to turn it off and we're going to wait for the next system. Well, you keep turning off your emergency systems and the reactor is going to boil the water so fast that all of the water turns to steam. And so they had a steam explosion.
Interesting.
And so the steam explosion blows up the aluminum garage. And now you've got, radiated water. The reactor is open and spraying water everywhere. So now they have to take a helicopter with a bucket and they're pouring concrete. They're flying over the reactor and they're spilling concrete on top of the reactor. And my response was, it's much easier to build a containment structure before the reactor blows up. If you had followed the advice of the Americans and you built a 5-foot thick containment structure, you could have had a Chernobyl accident and nobody would care.
Yeah. So the controllers who made these decisions were just following orders. So you could argue that it was the end result of a collectivist education system that trained people to not question anything at all and void of independent thinking. Do you think that was the case? Do you think that's really what?
Absolutely. That's what I've been trying to explain to you.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Chernobyl would never happen in the United States. Never. It's impossible for it to happen. One, because we build a 5-foot thick containment structure around the reactor as we're building the whole nuclear plant. And people in the United States are not the sharpest knife in the drawer, I admit. But if I'm standing there and I've got a safety system and the supervisor comes over and says, turn the safety system off, I'm going to say, I don't think so. I want to talk to your boss before I follow orders. And any nuclear operator who truly understands how this whole thing will work, he will break your arm before he lets you turn off a safety system. It's like, no, I'm in charge of this reactor. I'm responsible for this reactor, and there's no way that you're going to touch any switch on my control panel. And we have federal rules that say if you try, you go to jail. So engineering-wise, it couldn't happen, and sociology-wise, it couldn't happen. I mean, Americans do like to follow orders, the government said, but yeah, we're not. If the government said that you had to jump off a cliff without a parachute, Russians might do that. Americans would go, no, I quit this job. That's a long way down. I'm going to get hurt. No, you're not going to get hurt. You're going to be dead. You're not going to feel a thing.
Could you argue that where the way things are today, as far as the indoctrination system goes, we're not too far behind from the Russians back in the day?
Well, that's true. If we continue to teach our children, let me rephrase that. If we continue to allow the government to teach our children and indoctrinate them that authority is always correct, then yes, we will build a reactor, and I don't care what we call it, but we will have a Chernobyl style, event, because people aren't smart enough to disregard illegal and stupid orders.
So if someone were to come up to you and with children and say, so I'm thinking about sending my kids to school, what would you say to them?
Don't. Not, well, let's talk about it. Maybe you shouldn't, maybe you should. Don't. I don't have children, but I would never send my children to a public institution. Now, I've been teaching most of my life. I started teaching when I was 5 years old. My father brought a blackboard home and mounted it on the basement wall. Mom said that 5 minutes later, I had my younger brothers downstairs teaching them the alphabet. And at 5 years old, I concede that the alphabet's probably the only thing I was smart enough to teach. But I've been an advanced first aid instructor, a CPR instructor, a water safety instructor trainer, a scuba instructor, a skydiving instructor, and a technical trainer almost all my life.
Yeah.
You cannot ride on an elevator with me without learning something.
Yeah. Yeah, we homeschool ourselves. Do you think homeschooling is a definitive solution? Because I was impressed. There are schools out there, like we were talking about before, that are also equally impressive. And then you've got institutions like Montessori, Waldorf. What are your thoughts on alternatives to the government system?
There's a scale, and I can't decide what other people are going to do. If I had children, I would be the one teaching them, me, and only me. And I used to tease my mother. I used to tell my mother that if I have children, she won't be allowed to hug them until they're 5 years old and smarter than she is. And so not only, I mean, every parent tries to be, tries to defend their children physically. I would be defending my child intellectually.
Yeah.
It's like, don't believe anybody except daddy. If mama tells you something, check it with daddy before you accept it, because daddy will never lie to you. I will never lie to you. And I know science, I know math, I know physics, I know astronomy, I know oceanography. You name it, I know it. And if I don't know it, I can show you how to find out.
Yeah.
I had a lady friend who was separated from her husband, and her children would come to visit for a while during the summer. She called me and said, I want you to teach my children. I said, okay, what do you want me to teach them? She goes, I don't care. I just want you to spend 48 hours with them. So I went to their apartment, and the kids were young, like 7 and 9 years old at the time.
Yeah.
And I'm an adult male. Not only that, I'm an alpha male, so I command authority and respect. I walk in the room. And I told the kids, they're going to wake up at 8 o'clock. They want to sleep until 10 or 11. Go, no. You have a choice. You can either get out of bed on your own before 8 o'clock, or I will flip the mattress on the floor and I will dress you myself. It's up to you. Okay. Well, I'm a credible threat. I mean, they don't like it, but they're going to get up and they say, well, where are we going to go? I said, we're going to be at the museum. And they went, all day? I go, yes, all day. And it's like, they're begging their mom. It's like, Mom, do we have to go? Oh my God. It's like mom was punishing these kids because, mom is selling them into slavery. They've got to go with some, crazy guy. So we went to the museum. I didn't force them to learn anything. I just started asking questions. What's this? Why do you think that is? And, can you explain this to me? And finally, at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the museum is flashing lights because they're about to close and everybody has to go home. And the kids are holding onto a post going, no, not yet. We're not ready to go home. These are the same kids that thought that, staying in the afternoon was going to be terrible. So that was on Saturday. On Sunday, I took them to a zoo. It started to rain, so I took them to one of the battlegrounds for Texas and showed them that. And, as Texas is big, by the way, so if we're in the car driving for an hour and a half, I'm not going to waste that time. I'm asking questions like, what is the Declaration of Independence? Who wrote it? Why? Why go all through all that trouble? King George? I mean, was he really that bad? What's wrong with King George? Why couldn't we just? And I let them figure it out. So we finally get back to Mom Sunday night. Mom is going to take us all out for dinner. And we went to some cafeteria and we sat down. And I know children don't pay that much attention. I'm just throwing stuff against the wall to see how much sticks. And we sat down with our dinner trays and Mom said, well, what'd you do this weekend? It was like these kids were tape recorders. They started reciting back almost everything that I had said. I was like shocked. They remembered 80 or 90% of it. I'd have been happy if they'd remembered 10%.
Yeah. Because you piqued their interest by asking questions. That's the key to moving forward, isn't it?
That's what a teacher does. A good teacher facilitates learning and enthusiasm. I don't care how good of a teacher I am. I can't learn it for you. You're the one that has to do the thought process. You're the one that has to learn it for yourself. My job is to kind of leave the little breadcrumbs for you so you follow the path. I got to make it interesting. If you don't care, well, then you're never going to learn it. And so my specialty is being able to, I am enthusiastic about the topic. This is fun. And in fact, I will tell children, if it's not fun, it's not learning.
Yeah.
And you're not learning if you're not having fun. They are the same thing. So I have another friend, a couple, they like to go to concerts. They travel different places and go to a concert, and they like to drink beer. And so at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, after drinking lots and lots of beer, they're really not in a physical condition to drive home. So they always go to the concert and get a hotel. And while they're going to be home the following morning or following afternoon, but while they're gone, they like somebody to babysit their daughter. So they ask me, and they like it when I babysit their daughter for a number of reasons. One, I can turn any conversation into a learning experience. And the daughter goes, oh, damn it. Like I tricked her again. You know, this was supposed to be fun, but at the end of all of it, it's like, oh, damn, you snuck in information.
Yeah.
You made me smarter, damn it.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I know.
How old was she?
12.
Good. Yeah, that's a good age.
And so the other reason that they like me to be there is because I carry my gun. I literally wear my shoulder holster.
Yeah.
Now, the 12-year-old, she's 12, and she doesn't want a babysitter because she's 12. She's not a baby anymore. Why does she need a babysitter? I said, I'm not a babysitter. I'm your bodyguard. And I convinced her that she's just as lucky as Beyonce. You know, I'm her entourage. I'm her bodyguard. You know, she can do pretty much whatever she wants, and I'm there to protect her. And mom and dad like that too. They know no matter how long they're gone, when they come home, their daughter is going to be safe. There might be a pile of dead bodies in the front door. We may have some explaining to do to the sheriff, but their daughter is going to be healthy and fine.
Yeah. That's brilliant. Recommended reading. Someone wants to come up to you and say, Michael, I'm interested in freedom and liberty. What would be the most essential, basic reading material you would recommend them?
The first book
studies
would be The Law by Frederick Bastiat. Frederick Bastiat was a French economist and philosopher, came to the United States in like the 1820s, before the War of Southern Independence. And he thought that the United States was heaven on earth. And so he wrote a book, that's it, absolutely. He wrote a book called The Law. It's a pamphlet. Show how thin it is.
Yeah.
Show how skinny. It's at what, about 40 pages?
Yeah, something like that.
If it takes you an hour and a half to read that thing, you've got like a learning disability.
Yeah.
I mean, you can practically flip your thumb through it and read it. But what it is a very condensed explanation of what a legitimate government can do. Can you come into my house and take my money and my property? Well, no. Well, if you can't do it, you can't get together with any of your friends who also can't steal from me, and you cannot collectively create a government that can steal from me. If you don't have that authority, you can't create a government that does. And you have a right to life. Everybody will say that, but they don't understand that if you have a right to life, the corollary to that right is that you have a right to defend your life. And I will ask people, imagine that you're walking down the sidewalk and somebody comes up and they start to choke you. Like, what are you going to do? And they always come up with, well, I'll poke them in the eye, step on their foot, it's like, so you're going to use violence? You're going to hurt this other person? Well, yeah, because they're choking me and it's like self-defense. Did you call the chief of police to get permission to fight back? No. You have a letter in your pocket from the governor of the state. The governor of the state gave you permission to defend yourself. And they look at me like I'm crazy. And it's like, oh, so you're telling me that self-defense is an inherent right. It's a natural right that you have. You don't need the government's permission to defend yourself. Oh, okay. So if you have the responsibility and the right to defend yourself, you can create a government that is going to help you defend yourself. But if you read and understand Bastiat, he doesn't say that the government is going to protect you instead of yourself. It's in addition to yourself. Okay? So I have a gun. One idiot comes into my apartment at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I make a phone call and I go, send the morgue, or send the medical examiner to take this body to the morgue. It's like, what happened? Well, he tried to hurt me or steal from me, and I shot and killed him. And, it's like, why didn't you call the police? Because there's only one guy. If I'm going to call the police, 911, and then what? Wait for the police to show up?
No.
They're going to get there just in time to draw a chalk outline around my body? No, I am not required to be a victim. So why do we create a police department? Well, I create a police department because if there's a motorcycle gang outside, I can hold them off for a while, but I need backup. I want other people there to help me, unless, of course, my girlfriend is here and I've taught her how to shoot, and then we don't need the police again because we'll get the motorcycle gang in a crossfire and we'll eliminate those idiots. Yeah. So I am responsible for protecting myself. It's my life. I have the highest responsibility and the highest desire to keep me from being dead. And history demonstrates that police are not able to defend you. There's a billboard that says, when seconds count, the police are only minutes away. So you're responsible for your own life. Don't be dumb enough to give that responsibility to the government. And so you need to understand, read Frederick Bastiat, understand the law before you start reading about the Constitution. But then any of the founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, John Locke, Thomas Paine.
Thomas Paine. I was about to say, yeah.
The British were here, and the population was divided into three. 1/3 wanted independence, another third was loyal to the king, and a middle third really didn't care one way or another. Wake me when the war is over. Tell me who won the game. Okay? And so we just didn't have enough people. It's like, the king's not so bad. We'll just, pay a little more in taxes. It's easier. Well, Thomas Paine wrote a short document called Common Sense, which unfortunately I don't think there is anymore.
Yeah, that's somewhere else as well.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. But, you're asking me what people should read. Read Common Sense.
Yeah.
Okay? It's a short document. In fact, I think it's shorter than Bastiat's The Law.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Then go and read Patrick Henry's speech in 1775. If I say the name Patrick Henry, everybody goes, oh yeah, give me liberty or give me death.
Or give me death.
Really? That's what you remember. It's a 10 or 12-minute speech.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the give me liberty or give me death is just the punchline at the end. If you think give me liberty or give me death is cool, wait until you read it at the end of his 12-minute speech. And people will have t-shirts or bumper stickers that say, give me liberty or give me death. But it's like, really? You won't even turn off the TV. Give me liberty. My ass. I mean, you don't care. You're oblivious to whatever's going on. Read that speech and then tell me, give me liberty or give me death. So Bastiat,
Pain.
Thomas Paine, the Common Sense, Patrick Henry's speech, and then, like I said, any one of the founding fathers. I mean, they signed the Declaration of Independence, promising pledging their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. What does that mean to people? You're going to pledge your life? People won't even pledge their life to their children.
Yeah.
They're sending their children to government indoctrination centers. It's like, well, it's really tough. It's inconvenient for us to homeschool. Plus, the law says I have to send my children to school. So if the law said that you had to send your children to Auschwitz, you're going to follow that law too?
Yeah.
Really? Oh, my children, I love my children so much. No, you don't, apparently. Because you're not willing to do whatever it is that to teach them the skills and values they need to be functional adults.
Yeah, until laws push people to their limits, it's easy for them to just follow along. But
Yeah.
At the end of the day, when they're really put to the test, which rarely happens, but it can, is their philosophy in check? Do they know where they stand when push comes to shove?
So let's say the government makes it a law that you have to send your children to school for a week so their child could be lobotomized. We're going to give your children a lobotomy. We're going to make a little hole behind your eye, stick in a needle, and we're going to basically destroy the frontal lobe. But it's only for a week. And you think that people would be willing to send their children to the hospital for a week because, my God, it's cheaper than school.
Yeah.
What's the difference between having them lobotomized over a week or having them brainwashed over 12 years?
Yeah.
Brainwashing doesn't do any physical damage. It just makes them incapable of thinking.
Well, I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to undo what was done to me. Better late than never, but that's
that is not true when you're skydiving.
Sorry?
You said better late than never. That is not true with skydiving.
That's true. Yeah.
As a skydiving instructor, my students would often ask me, how close to the ground can I be and pull the ripcord? And I said, 5 feet. And they go, really? The parachute will open in 5 feet? I go, no. You asked me how low you could be and pull the ripcord. If you want the parachute to open, you should do that much higher.
Very good. one final thought before we wrap up. What are your thoughts on the Autonomy course season 1? What Richard Grove is doing, and how's it been so far for you?
I am on Discord, but I haven't genuinely taken the class. I came in late. I haven't actually participated in all the events. I've been running around. I'm in contact with Richard and Lisa, and we're working on a project together. But it would be inappropriate for me to evaluate a class that I haven't really sat through from start to finish.
Well, you certainly added value, and again, we appreciate you being the guest lecturer a few weeks ago. That was a great experience. And well, we've got Red Pill coming up. You're going to be speaking at Red Pill in Hartford.
I am. I was a little bit surprised. I know G. Edward Griffin personally. I mean, I can call him on the phone. I don't because there's no reason to bother him. But yeah, Richard and Lisa were the ones that basically made it possible for me to speak at Red Pill. And I'm terribly flattered because most of the speakers are given a 15-minute time slot, and I was given a 30-minute time slot Friday night. So I'll be basically the kickoff. I'll be setting the standard for the other speakers. So I apologize to them already.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a good experience. Do I dare ask? Have you thought about what you're going to speak about, or is it too early?
Oh, I do know what I'm going to speak about, and it's the less time I have, the more difficult it is to speak. Because I have so much information, I've got to whittle it down. It's like, okay, can you give me a 5-page summary of I can explain what Shakespeare's play was all about. Can you do it in a paragraph? Let me work on that.
Yeah.
Maybe I can, but it's going to be much more difficult to compress all the drama of a Shakespeare play into one paragraph. So I've had to mentally whittle down. It's like, okay, I've only got 30 minutes. And I've had people say, well, what are you worried about? They just want somebody to talk for 30 minutes. That is not true. If they just wanted somebody to talk for 30 minutes, they could draw straws or, pull a lottery ticket and bring somebody out of the audience up to the microphone and let them ramble on and on and on for 29 and a half minutes. That's not what they want. If the people organizing the Red Pill Expo are giving me a 30-minute time slot, that means whatever I am saying has got to be at least twice as important as what the other speakers have. And so they don't want me to just speak. They want me to be impressive. They want me to be motivational. They want me to bring people to their feet for a standing ovation. They want people going home from Red Pill events several days later and still remembering what Badnarik talked about. So that's a pretty high expectation. And so I am putting a considerable amount of thought and effort into it. I'm confident that I will exceed the expectation, but it's not something you could just sit down and rip off in 5 minutes at the typewriter.
Yeah. Well, if you need to go through the speech with us in Discord, we'll be happy to give you feedback beforehand.
Oh, sure. So you guys can skip out on the expo itself. No. You guys can't. You don't get a free preview. You got to bring yourself to Hartford, Connecticut if you want to hear the speech.
Well, I'm certainly going to be there, and I know many of the Autonomy students are going to be there as well. Well, Michael, I appreciate your time this evening. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank your audience for listening, and people can visit my website, constitutionpreservation.org. They can find information about the 3 books I've written. They can find my contact information if they know how to browse. And if they have questions, they can always email me or call me on the phone.
That's great. Thanks a lot.
My pleasure. Thanks for doing this.